G'day, Bomber fans. We're obviously getting pretty close to the draft now. It is really creeping up on us. It is less than 2 weeks away, which is brilliant. You love to see it. I mean, you've seen the title of the video. You know what I'm doing today. We're doing my first mock draft on the Everything Essendon channel for the year, which is I'm slacking a bit, aren't I? Just to clarify before I start, this isn't going to be me selecting players based on who I think the clubs should be selecting. That might be the case a bit for the Bombers. I might let my personal opinion get the better of me there. But for all the other clubs, it's going to be more of a prediction and more of I guess I'll be selecting players that I think the clubs will be selecting or are in line to be picking. And a few things before we start. We do have a trade or two to discuss. So obviously there's been discussions about Essendon and Gold Coast trading, points for Gold Coast, further higher picks for Essendon. I'm going to go through and lock that trade in just for the sake of this video so we can discuss more prospects. I'm going to trade picks 21 and 27 from the Bombers to the Gold Coast Suns for pick 15. And I'm also going to let Carlton keep picks 9 and 11 in the draft heading into it. There's been talk about them trading those selections away to prepare for a Harry Dean bid. I think it could be beneficial for the Blues if they keep those selections and let them get eaten up in a bid and slide back into the first round. And I'll discuss that when it comes into it. Let's just get into this though. All right, with pick 1 in the 2025 AFL draft, the West Coast Eagles on the board will be selecting Willem Dersma. I don't think there's really much surprise here at all. With pick 1 in the draft, you're picking the best available player, and West Coast luckily have access to Willem Dersma. No other clubs will have access to him unless the Eagles trade away pick 1, which I don't think they will. This guy is just an incredible talent and obviously someone that the Bombers would really want on their list. Dersma, I feel like he should give this Eagles team a bit more life. I can see him playing behind the ball early as he gets used to AFL footy and as his frame fills out, but eventually he will be a taller midfielder, and that is where I think he will play his best footy. The Eagles really get a great prospect at pick 1, and if you pair him with Harley Reid and the other Victorian boys at the club there, they'll be hoping that they can build a really strong list for the future at West Coast. I think West Coast fans will be absolutely over the moon with this. They get Willem Dersma with pick 1. With pick 2, it is West Coast again on the clock. There are going to be bids in this year's draft. There is a bit of an academy flavour early. There's quite a bit of supreme talent from the NGAs and father-sons. And with pick 2, I'm going to, as West Coast, bid on Zeke Hewland from the Gold Coast Suns, and the Gold Coast Suns will match that bid and welcome Zeke Hewland to the club. Hewland he hasn't really done heaps this year. His draft profile was built predominantly last year and previously before that. He's been hidden away a bit with injuries this season, but clubs still know his talent. There's a reason he's high up on boards. There's almost certainly going to be an early bid, and if it isn't pick 2, it won't be much later. This guy's great. He's a bit of a smaller option this early in the draft, but he's got great skills and a great footy mindset. He's really tough. There's a notion that he is a captain in waiting for the Suns. It's a no-brainer for Gold Coast to match this bid. He's a great prospect, Zeke Hewland. West Coast on the clock again with pick 3. This time they're going to be taking a player, and this is where it's interesting because you get a few different people saying different things. There's obviously it's pretty tough to split a few of these guys after Willem Dersma. You've got Sullivan Roby, who's the biggest bolter in history. You've got Cooper Duff-Tytler, who's just a gem. He's been a gem all year. There's Dyson Sharp, who maybe gives the Eagles a bit more leadership. I can see why, you can make an argument for any of those players with pick 3. I personally think the Eagles, and this I might be wrong here, so don't take my word for it, but I personally think the Eagles would be going for a Cooper Duff-Tytler with pick 3. It's just, you could choose between any of them, but I think the way the ruck rules are changing to kind of suit players like CDT, teams early in the draft are going to be knowing, that getting him and developing him in their system could be a huge weapon for the future. It's always tough to predict how good a player is going to be in an AFL system, especially with rucks and key position players. But if this guy is to reach his potential, he will be genuinely game-changing. It's rare to find footballers this physically imposing, but also nimble and quick and good with his foot skills. I think CDT to the Eagles is a great pick. And if you tell West Coast fans at the start of the year they're getting a prime Bontempelli type ball winner in Willem Dersma and one of the best modern day rucks to come out of a draft, hopefully, in Cooper Duff-Tytler, they'd be over the moon. On the clock with pick 4, we've got the Richmond Tigers. They've got back-to-back selections in this year's draft, and I've got them bidding early on another academy prospect. This one from the Gold Coast Suns. It is Dylan Patterson. Obviously, the Suns have to match both these bids, which is why I conducted that trade before the mock draft with the Bombers. And Dylan Patterson's great. I really like this guy. I think he's an incredible prospect. At one stage in this year, I had him at number 1 in my rankings, and it was kind of around that game in Champs where he'd gone on that massive run on Marvel Stadium to you know, that a crazy assist near the end of a game. I remember watching that and just blown away with what he could do. I really like him, and I think if he was on open boards, he'd be a player that the Dons would really like as well. He's got serious pace and real dare out of the back half. He's got a rugby background, and you can kind of see that with the way he plays. He's got rugby attributes, which is really handy when you've got a player he can kind of mould and form into something new as well with footy skills attached. That's what kind of sets him apart from others in this draft. So yeah, I think this is a great pickup for the Suns. Already, they've got draft picks in the 20s and 30s, and they're able to get Zeke Hewland and Dylan Patterson, 2 of the highest rated players in this draft. So yeah, I've got the Tigers bidding again at pick 5. I don't know if there's going to be lots of bids early on. We don't know when these bids will come. We don't know what order they're going to come in, but just know that they'll come early, probably before our picks. And Dan Annable will be bidded on before Essendon select, I'd assume. Dan Annable is a Brisbane Academy player, and the Brisbane Lions will obviously match that bid. It seems pretty fair that Brisbane, the reigning premiers, just get one of probably the best pure midfielder in this draft for free. Dan Annable is such a rounded and professional midfielder. He's probably one of the players in this draft that I struggle to find weaknesses for. He is so consistent, so professional. He maybe doesn't have as high a range of upside as others around him, but you know what you get from him. You get a great stoppage midfielder who works really, really hard. You get a good leader as well. He's another who's often called a captain in waiting. I think this is good for the AFL. You know, the Lions did need a bit of help. The AFL needed to give them a bit of a leg up because they weren't doing well enough, I don't think. So, yeah, they deserve Dan Annable at pick 5. Richmond on the board with pick 6. No bidding now. I think they're going to go back-to-back here, and one of these players, unfortunately, for Bomber fans, I think will be Sullivan Roby. I don't think he's going to get through the cracks to Essendon. I hope he does, and if he does, I think the Bombers would select him, but I just don't see a world where the Tigers would pass on him. Even West Coast passing on him feels hard, but Richmond passing on him would be just a strange one. I think they really need a player. Well, they don't need a player like this, but the upside he has and the potential he has. You know, I know that they drafted Josh Smiley and Sam Lawler in last year's draft, but having another player like that with that upside who can also play forward of the ball, he's still growing too, so he could genuinely be a key position talent. It makes a lot of sense to me. This is a guy I would absolutely love him on Essendon's list. I just think he is way too good to be sliding to our picks. He's got serious upside, serious potential. The fact that he bolted so late, had that massive 17-centimeter growth spurt, which turned him from a smaller nuggety player into a proper brute. He's massive now, the guy. He's put so much work on his body in the gym, and it's meant that he can dominate games while still being raw enough to show upside. And that is what I really love about him. The fact that we're seeing him dominate against his peers, but he's nowhere near finished product. So there is so much upside with Sullivan Roby. Ideal world he slides to the Bombers. I don't think he does. Pick 7's a really tough one for Richmond, and this is what's going to really shape the draft and shape what Essendon do. There's a few options. You've got Xavier Taylor. I think he's a player that Richmond would really like, even though they've got a few like him from their list, from their draft last year. Luke Traynor is a good example. You could argue a few others. Dyson Sharp and Sam Cumming. Probably not quite in that range. For me, it's a bit of a 50-50 with Xavier Taylor and the guy that I'm going with, Sam Grill. All year, Richmond have really liked Sam Grill. He trained with them. He popped up in their VFL and played really well. They've been linked to him all year. And the funny thing about this is that if Richmond don't take Sam Grill at pick 7, I think he slides through Essendon's picks. I don't think the Bombers take him. I'm not sure if Melbourne take him either. He's someone that most clubs would actually rate around that maybe 15 or 10 to 15 to 20 range. Richmond really like him, and in this year's draft, it's kind of a case of you know, because the talent is so even a lot of the time, if you like a player, just take him, and that's what I think Richmond will do with Sam Grill. I hope they do, because it'll benefit the Bombers. I think it does suit the Bombers. You know, we don't know if it's definitely going to happen yet, but if this situation does occur, because clubs below Richmond would pass on Grill, it means that we've got options higher up the board that we like Xavier Taylor, who I'll talk on in a second. But I think this is a draft where, you know, even if it means players are bolting ahead of where they're projected to go, like Sam Grill would be doing here, the Tigers need speed. They need speed out of the back half. They've, you know, bolstered their list in so many ways to bring in strength, to bring in forces everywhere, that, you know, key position players. Last year's draft was incredible for Richmond, and it allowed them to really do quite a lot in this year's draft, do what they want to do. They've got so much talent on their list, so much young talent. I like the idea of them going for a Sam Grill if they like him as a player. I know that he's probably not quite a top 5 or what is he, 7 player in the draft, but it makes sense to me. You know, if you like a player, go for it. Essendon on the board, and we're going to wait until we pick because we're going to put in a bid on Carlton, father-son, Harry Dean, and the Carlton Blues will accept. What's going to happen here with this pick now, because Carlton obviously keep 9 and 11. 9, which is now 13, will be eaten up, and the other pick will slide back into the 20s. So they will be picking again in the first round. That second first round pick that they have slides back a little bit, and that's why it's beneficial for the Blues, I think, to keep these selections, because you're going to get a top 10 player anyway, but also another pick in the first round. So it makes sense. And Harry Dean's a great prospect, by the way. I think this would be a player that the Bombers would want. Harry Dean, he's a ready-made key defender, but of course, if you're a key position player, there's upside anyway that you're not really going to, or you probably could, but you know, the stagnating is rare for a player when they're 18. A player, especially like a player like Harry Dean, who seems so professional and just calm and composed in the back half, he'd be a player that the Bombers would really love. I think if he was on the open board, again, the Bombers would be going for him, and the reason I've got us bidding on him is because I think Essendon would really like him on the list, but Carlton are going to match the bid. Harry Dean joins the Blues. And with pick 9, we now have the Essendon Bombers, and this is where we take a bit more time with it. There are a few options around. I think what we're going to do with this selection is pretty much we're going to choose whatever slides from those early picks. So obviously there's 4 picks in the open draft ahead of us. You've got West Coast with 2, Richmond with 2. I said in a video the other day that there are the 4 horsemen of the draft apocalypse. Some of you guys hated that. I hated that. Some of you liked it, so I'm going to bring it back for this video as well. The 4 horsemen of the draft apocalypse, I think, for the Bombers, these are the guys that I think are just talented than those around them, more talented, are Willen Dersma, Sullivan Roby, Cooper Duff-Tytler, and Xavier Taylor. And I think if any of those 4 slide to the Bombers picks here, the Bombers would take one of them, or 2, hopefully, in an ideal world. Probably won't be 2 realistically. But in this situation, Xavier Taylor has slid to pick 9, meaning with pick 9, Essendon select Xavier Taylor in the draft. I don't think he's going to slide much further than that. I think the Bombers would really like him. I think most clubs would really like him. I wouldn't be surprised if Richmond take him earlier with one of their selections as well. He's a supreme talent in this year's draft, and Essendon with pick 9 would be really lucky to take him. You know, it would be great for the Bombers. I think he's one of the best draft prospects this year. He's one of my favourites. He's primarily a defender, but I don't think he's locked down to that role. He's 191 centimeters, very athletic, incredibly quick and fit. He roams around the back half, intercepting really, really well, but he doesn't just intercept and call it a day. He's the type to collect the ball and create something with it going forward. There's a bit of Josh Weddle about that. You know, some would say Jordan Ridley. I think his foot skills aren't as silky as Jordan Ridley. He's more of a movement-based player like Weddle. He's going to break lines with his legs, not his ball use. He's also really well known for his leadership. Those who are at Talent League games hear him behind the ball shouting instructions to his teammates. He's very vocal, he's very intelligent, and has a great understanding of how the game is played. And he not only knows what he should be doing on the field, but where his teammates and those around him should be as well. He's very much a general of the backline, which I think is perfect for the Bombers going forward, but I don't actually think he's locked down to that role either. I think I could see him transitioning into a wingman or even a midfielder with his athletic attributes. So yeah, this is the way I see it happening. You could argue a few things. You could say that the Bombers would double up on midfielders. I think with these early picks, you go best available talent when you can. And there are 4 players, the 4 horsemen of the draft apocalypse, that I think if you're Essendon, you just have to select if they're available. Xavier Taylor's one of them. He's available. I've got the Bombers selecting Xavier Taylor at pick 9 in the draft. Now, this really does all depend on what Richmond do with Sam Grill, or pick 4, whatever pick they have there. If they pass on Sam Grill and take Xavier Taylor, I think the Bombers could easily go with a double up on the midfielders, take the SA duo. The question now is, if this situation comes to fruition and the Bombers have just selected Xavier Taylor, now we're choosing between a few players that I think the club really likes. I think the club likes Sam Cumming, Dyson Sharp, and Jacob Farrow. Jacob Farrow is probably the odd one out here because he's not quite a midfielder yet. He's more of I think he'll transition into a midfielder, but it'll take a bit more time. I see Sam Cumming and Dyson Sharp as that's the 50-50. If Essendon select Xavier Taylor with pick 9, I think it's between Sharp and Cumming for pick 10. You could argue either. You can make an argument for either. I'm pretty torn on what I think the club will do. So I'm going to lean with what I think the club should do and take Sam Cumming with pick 10. I think Cumming kind of sets himself apart from the others because of how rounded he is. Sharp is more of a contest player. I do love the leadership side of Sharp's game. Farrow probably isn't even, like as I said, a midfielder yet, so we'll just discount him for a second in this conversation. But Sam Cumming just seems the most logical choice, given the fact you can see what he's going to be at the level in a few different ways. He can come in early and be an inside 50 operator if he can't break into that midfield. Kind of like I could see like a Jade Gresham kind of role in a way, slightly different, but he can use his athleticism and hops to be a threat on the ground level and in the air. He can work around the ground like Gresham kind of does. But eventually when he's in the midfield, we might see a bit of a menace. And I think that's what you guys will really like about him. He's a really tough player Cumming. I've talked a lot on the channel about how great he was against grown men in the Sandful. But he's a really tough kid, and I think many would fall in love with him for that reason. I think he would be a bit of a cult figure when he joins the Dons. And I do think his outside game needs a bit of work. Some will say that, but I think that's the same with Dyson Sharp. If we wanted a good kick at this range, we'd be taking Lindsay or Farrow. I personally like the idea of Josh Lindsay, but I don't think the club's going to do that. I think he's going to slide quite a bit, so I'm not going to select him if I don't think he's really in our range. For me, it's between Sharp and Cumming, it makes sense. If you're able to get one of those 4 horsemen of the draft apocalypse and a midfielder, either one of these guys, Cumming or Sharp, would be great to pair along with Xavier Taylor, who I think is a really good bridging piece. I think this pick is massive because it's going to dictate what happens with the clubs behind us. I think whoever we don't select out of Sharp and Cumming probably goes to Melbourne with the next pick. But yeah, it's a good combo. You get Xavier Taylor, high upside behind the ball, a bit of a leader, a general back there, really great athlete, can do a few things as well. A bit more, I'm not going to say unicorn because we don't like that phrase, but a bit more, it's an upside pick. He's a project player, whereas Sam Cumming, you kind of know what you're getting from him. You're getting a tough, hard-working inside midfielder. Probably needs to work a bit on the outside, but I really like that as a combo. Xavier Taylor and Sam Cumming to the Bombers with picks 9 and 10. I think that's happy days. At pick 11, I've got the Melbourne Demons taking Dyson Sharp. I think what they're going to do here is pretty much pick up the scraps that we leave behind from our picks. If we were to take Dyson Sharp, I think they'd probably be in line to take Sam Cumming. I think Melbourne, though, would probably prefer Dyson Sharp anyway. I can see, you look at who they've lost in the trade period. They obviously lost Christian Petrarca, who's gone to Gold Coast. They lost Clayton Oliver, who's gone to the Giants. And I think Dyson Sharp's probably a good replacement for Clayton Oliver. He's a pretty similar player. He's primarily an inside midfielder. You wouldn't see him, doing too much in transition. That's probably his main weakness and a big one. I think that's the reason why I don't rate him as much as other midfielders in this year's draft, because his transition side of things is probably a bit weaker. But I think Melbourne will be okay with that. They're a team Clayton Oliver was kind of playing that role anyway, and Dyson Sharp being that younger player with leadership capabilities, a really professional young player to kind of guide those around him. They're going to have more youth in the team this year. They're kind of in a rebuilding phase themselves, and having Dyson Sharp on a list during that phase is never a bad thing. This is why I think I wouldn't complain if he goes to the Bombers, even though I think the upside isn't there as much, because having Dyson Sharp there, it's a young leader. You get someone who at 18 years old can almost captain those around him, because he's done that with the South Australian boys anyway. So yeah, I've got the Melbourne Demons taking Dyson Sharp with pick 11. And with pick 12, this is where it's tough. You could pick about 6 or 7 different players here. I really struggle to split quite a few, but I've got the Demons taking Aiden Schubert with pick 12. And I mean, is it a needs base? Probably not. You could argue they still do need key forwards, but I think there's quite a few different positions that Melbourne need this year. I think there's, you can bolster that midfield even more because it's looking pretty weak without those big names in there. I think behind the ball it's getting a bit thin as well. It's thin everywhere. So I think you go best available talent, and I like the idea of Aiden Schubert joining the club. I think Melbourne have always struggled a bit with ruck depth, and Aiden Schubert, although isn't a ruckman, can ruck, but he is more of a key forward, which again is something they've missed for so long. Like, when's the last time Melbourne had a really good key forward? I cannot remember. I actually can't. I'm trying to think back in my head right now, and I genuinely can't. But I think Aiden Schubert's a really good option to have, because he's not just a key forward that kicks goals. He's someone who gets around the ground and accumulates. He's got a really good work ethic and a great tank on him. And in the modern game, as we lean towards transition footy, that is really really, really important. That's why I think the Bombers like him. You know, having a player like that alongside Nate Caddy would make a lot of sense, but I've got Melbourne taking him with pick 12, and that'd be great, by the way, for the Demons having a bit of an SA flavour with Dyson Sharp and Aiden Schubert. They've got a few more South Aussies on the list as well to pair up with them, but having two more come in at the same time, kind of like what with, to a lesser extent, but with what Gold Coast did with Matt Rowell and Noah Anderson back in the day, having those, you know, two mates from the same team join each other. They also play for Central Districts, by the way, Dyson Sharp and Aiden Schubert. That's only just clicked in my head. So, yeah, 11 and 12, I've got Melbourne taking Dyson Sharp and Aiden Schubert, and I think they'd like that draft haul. With 13, we've got Hawthorn, and again, there's a few players that you could go with. I was kind of thinking about a Noah Hibbins-Hargraves, maybe a Harley Barker early. I like Oscar Taylor for Hawthorn as well, but I've gone with Jacob Farrow. He's in that range of the draft anyway. He's probably going to be taken quite early in the teens, and I think he's a pretty, I don't know, he's a Hawthorn-coded player. To me, I feel like this is a guy that Hawthorn will pick in the draft. He's a West Aussie, and he'll just like it there, and he'll develop really nicely. You'll see, you know, all the attributes on paper that you haven't quite seen him nail all together at once yet, just, you know, come about. He's going to be that really good sized midfielder who can use his left foot really nicely. He's a lovely kick of the footy, and I think that'd be great for Hawthorn, a team who really likes to transition the ball. He could probably play early next year as well. He's got a good frame and good size. Whether it's behind the ball, they've got enough depth there maybe, but yeah, I like Jacob Farrow to Hawthorn. I think it makes a lot of sense. They could go with about 4 or 5 different players here, and it'd work out well though. GWS, I've got them taking Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. I think this makes a lot of sense for GWS. If Farrow was available, I'd probably have them taking him as well, but I like Hibbins-Hargraves. The Giants are a team who, I mean, they like bolters, so I was thinking of a few players in the 20s that they might like as well. Hibbins-Hargraves himself is probably, you know, he's probably around this range, but more the later side of the teens, I think, in most boards. I like him, though. I've been flip-flopping on him a bit this year. I saw him live, Dandenong versus Calder Cannons, and he really impressed me in that game because he was playing a multitude of different roles in it. He was playing almost as a pseudo key forward, which, you know, for his size, he's under 190, was really impressive. But he's got great work ethic to get around the ground. I've always said his best work comes about 40 to 60 or 70 meters away from goals. I don't think he's someone, he can finish, and he's got clutch factor in him. He can kick a goal, but I really like him as the link-up piece going inside 50. He's a really good ball user, probably one of the better kicks in this draft. He's got a lot to him, Noah Hibbins-Hargraves. He's not locked down to a forward flank role. Probably the one downside, to be honest, with him is the fact that you don't know what exactly he will be. Like, if you're to say what Noah Hibbins-Hargraves' exact position is when he joins the AFL next year, it's tough. You'd probably say forward flanker, but I could see him being anywhere. You could even see him kind of doing a role out of defence and using his ball use for good. So I think he's a really interesting player. And the Giants don't often pick cemented, you know, positions. They don't really always pick midfielders. They don't pick, you know, certain players of certain positions. They pick players that can play multiple different roles because that's the way the team likes to play anyway. So I think Noah Hibbins-Hargraves to the Giants makes a lot of sense. We have got West Coast again on the board. They've got pick 15. I've got them already taken Willem Dersma and Cooper Duff-Tytler, the big ruckman. I've gone a bit smaller here. We're going from a ruck to a small forward. I like Lockie Doverston to the Eagles. I think, again, the Eagles are a team you could pick so many different positions for them to fill. These are the teams that make mock drafts really hard because you can pick a defender, you can pick a midfielder, you can pick anyone, and it would make their list better. Like, they've got so many holes that they need to fill. I think for a while, and especially with Liam Ryan leaving, small forwards is on the agenda. It really just has to be. They tried to bring in a few. Tyler Brockman hasn't really worked, but I think Lockie Doverston, surely that works. I think he's almost a bankable small forward. I think the last few drafts we've seen, the earliest small forwards taken have all been bankable. You know, Nick Watson to Hawthorn, that was a bankable pick. Isaac Kako to Essendon, we know he's going to be at the very least a good player because he already kind of is for us. And Lockie Doverston, I see the same. He kind of models his game off Nick Watson. He's got the mullet, he's got the attitude. Eastern Rangers boy as well. A little bit more height. He's 178, 177, but he also works up the ground to get more of the footy. So he's probably more of an accumulator and not as much a natural goal sneak as Nick Watson. So that's probably interesting for West Coast and probably a good thing as well. You know, you want those Hawthorn type forwards who, you know, they don't do their best work inside 50. I look at Dylan Moore and Jack Ginnivan as better players than Nick Watson because of what they do up the field, and that's Lockie Doverston to me. So I think West Coast would really like, I mean, already that's a great draft all, getting Willem Dersma, Cooper Duff-Tytler and Lockie Doverston through the doors. That's great. With pick 16, I've got the Bulldogs taking Josh Lindsay. I wanted to pull a cheeky little move and have him slide down to our pick, which is next, because I'd really like him on the list. But I think the Bulldogs would take him. You know, you look at what they've lost in recent years, not just, you know, personnel with Joe Hannison and other smaller defenders, you know, who primarily are accumulators and attack from defence, but also just in their team. Like, they've lost a bit of spark and pizzazz out of the back half. You know, Bailey Dale on his day is incredible, but he doesn't have heaps of help out of the back half, especially because Ed Richards is now in the midfield playing primarily there. That's not a knock on Richards or anything. I think he's a great player, but him leaving that back line has probably left a hole, and I think Josh Lindsay is the type of player that could fill that hole. You know, you look at what the Bulldogs need. It's not heaps. They've got a great list as it is, but having a player like Josh Lindsay come into the team, he's already, you know what he's going to be at AFL level at the very worst, and that is a very good kick of the footy. He's not going to come into the AFL and just lose his foot skills completely. The worst he will be is probably, you know, less mobile, less athletic, and less damaging away from his ball use. But having this guy in the back half distributing the footy, you know, using it well, I think it makes a lot of sense for a team who really likes to spread the ground and get some run into their play. Bailey Dale can be the one, you know, using his legs to distribute the footy, like running with the footy. Josh Lindsay's probably a bit more stationary and likes to kick to break lines. And I think the Bulldogs would like that in Josh Lindsay. So yeah, I've got them. The Bulldogs picking Josh Lindsay at pick 16. All right, Essendon on the board again with pick 17. I want you guys here to just have a guess who I think we're going to select. I'll go through some names. There is Jevon Philippou, Mitch Marsh, Oscar Taylor, Harley Barker, Ollie Greaves. I won't even go any further because you know who I'm taking. It's Harley Barker. I've talked about Harley Barker so much on the channel. You guys know how much I rate him. Like, I think 17 is far too low for Harley Barker. In my eyes, he's a top 10 prospect. I think he is. It is so rare to see players this young understand the game like Harley Barker does. You can talk about his athleticism, the way that he covers grass. He's got incredible endurance, which means he can outrun players and opponents, and it really helps, you know, working back and forth, up and back. He's great in defense, great going forward. He's got serious pace as well, so he's not only fit, but he's quick, and it's why you often see Harley Barker running towards goals, kicking goals on the run with his opponent not even in frame, because he just works harder and smarter than his opponents. But yeah, but back to his IQ. It is rare to see a player this young, this smart. The way he understands the game, the way he understands where he should be, what he should be doing is incredible. I think it is just severely slept on. I don't see his AFL IQ brought up enough in his strengths on draft profiles, and that really surprises me because I think he's probably one of the smarter players in this year's drafts. And I think to be a good draft prospect, you need to have a good understanding of the game. And Harley Barker he's got a great understanding of the game. You know, the thing is, right, I've actually never seen Harley Barker best on ground before, and that might surprise you. I don't think I've ever thought Harley Barker was, you know, the defining piece in a game or the best on ground in a game, the most dominant player in a game. But he's always controlling what he can control. He's always controlling his side of the field on his wing. And that's what you need. You know, you don't always need those Ollie Greaves type players who can go out there and get 40 touches and 8 goals a game. That's amazing. But is that going to be, you know, is that going to transition through to AFL footy? That's the question. For me, seeing Harley Barker do what he does, even just 15 touches a game, but the way he gets them and the importance of those touches and the grass and the way he guards space and you know, controls the widths of his sides, it's incredible seeing what Harley Barker does. I really, really like him. I'd crossing my fingers that we do, you know, trade up to pick 15 and take Harley Barker. Even if we don't, I wouldn't bat an eyelid if the club selected him with those back-to-back picks 5 and 6. I know quite a few would, because it would be a massive bolt, but I think Harley Barker is a fantastic draft prospect, a top 10 in my eyes. And yes, we have some wingmen. We just brought in Braden Fiorini, but you know, with Barker's ACL, he's not going to play next year anyway. You know, Fiorini's getting 29. He's in there for a 3 or 4 year contract. I think Barker coming in would you know, spruce up some life into the team so he can try and get in that side to get ahead of those players and give us some friendly competition. So yeah, with pick 17, I'm taking Harley Barker. Probably no surprise to you guys there. With pick 18, I've got the Adelaide Crows taking Jevon Philippou. I was tossing up between Philippou and Mitch Marsh here for some South Australian flavour. The good things about the Crows picks here is that this range of the draft is very SA heavy. There are quite a few South Aussies. You know, I've just taken Harley Barker. You know, there was Sharp and Schubert earlier. You've got Marsh on the board still as well. Jevon Philippou, I mean, it's more of an upside thing. I don't think the Crows are going to be blooding too many debutants anyway in 2026. They're probably going to be going pretty hard for a flag. But Jevon Philippou, I've always said that he's about, a year or two, or maybe a year behind on his development. It looks like he's an under 17, the way he plays, not the stature or the physicality, but the rawness in his game. I talk about Harley Barker understanding footy. I think Jevon Philippou understands footy, but he doesn't understand quite how to, package it all together yet. And part of that might be the injury. He was injured quite a bit this year. But yeah, Jevon Philippou to 18 at Adelaide, probably a project player. He's got a lot of upside. He's got a lot of craft and a lot of skill. He's, an athlete as well, a track and field star. But I think the Crows would like that one. And with 19, I've got Geelong taking Mitch Marsh. I think this makes a lot of sense. They've got a few older key forwards on their list. Obviously, Tom Hawkins retired last year. You've got Jeremy Cameron, who's probably getting closer to the end of his career. Mitch Marsh, to me, looks a bit like Jeremy Cameron anyway, the way he plays. He's not a stay-at-home key forward. He gets up the ground. He's very fit. He gets to work. A very good ball user, too, on that left boot. So, yeah, this is someone I think who can kind of learn under Jeremy Cameron and be that type of player when he develops into a ready-made AFL player, because he's still a bit lean. I really like Mitch Marsh. I rate him quite a bit higher than 19. I just didn't really find a range or a club that could really act on him at that stage. And I think Geelong is probably the best bet around this range. It makes a lot of sense. There's a few players that they could take, but I think Mitch Marsh learning under Jeremy Cameron to be that mobile key forward, 190 centimetres, I think Mitch Marsh is. Not tall at all, but neither is Jeremy Cameron. So, yeah, I think when he grows into 191, 192, as draftees often do, you're going to see him probably a bit more imposing in the air when he builds a bit of muscle, and that's where you'll see him really get to work, because he's already got the craft and the skill and the understanding to be a good footballer as it is. At 20, I've got the Fremantle Dockers taking Oscar Taylor. This is a guy I think could go really early. I've been thinking about him at pick 12 for Melbourne, 13 for Hawthorn, 14 for GWS. I think he could go to either of those clubs and the clubs below as well. And really, this isn't a needs-based pick for the Dockers. I don't think they need an Oscar Taylor. They don't need a dashing, rebounding defender. He's lightning quick. He bolts out of the back half for the Eastern Rangers. It's more of it's a slider. If someone's sliding, if someone's really talented, quite high up draft boards, and he slides to your picks, sometimes you just got to take him, even though you might not necessarily need that type of player. They've obviously got Jordan Clark, Hayden Young, other players that kind of run forward from the back half. Oscar Taylor can play a few different positions. I don't think he's locked down to defence. I see his attributes going, quite a bit more than that. And this is a great guy. We kind of sleep on Oscar Taylor a bit because of the fact that Sullivan Roby, his teammate, bolted even higher. But this guy, his story is great as well, the way he bolted up draft board. So yeah, Oscar Taylor at pick 20. Honestly feels a bit low. I think you could go quite a bit higher than that. Carlton at 21. This is a selection that was slid back in that Harry Dean bid, so they've got a pick at 21 now. I've got them taking, this might be a strange one. I don't think anyone's thrown this one out yet, but I've got them taking Louis Emmett. I look at what Carlton need. They obviously, they lost Charlie Curnow, key forward. That is not ideal. They've got Harry Mackay, of course, but then you look at what they've lost in the ruck with Tom de Koning. They're going to be going with Pitternet there next year. So they've lost a key forward. They've lost a ruck. They've lost, two of their best players in those positions. Bringing in Louis Emmett, it gives you both. And that's the great thing about Louis Emmett. He was a top 10, top 5 prospect to start the year. Injuries really hurt his year, and some form as well. But you look at his profile and what he's got at his best. He's a really mobile, athletic player. Runs a 6'7", 2K time trial. That might be wrong. I might be thinking of someone else. He's very fit is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I think this is a good player to develop, and I think 21 feels, if you told me at the start of the year that Carlton would have got Louis Emmett with pick 21, it probably would have been surprising, because most of us were thinking he'd go quite high. But it's good, sometimes you just got to go on those players who've, injuries have hurt their seasons a bit. Maybe there's something hiding there when they get into an AFL system and gain a bit more fitness. I think the Blues going for Louis Emmett makes a bit of sense. I know that plenty might disagree with that, might get roasted, but it makes sense to me. We've got Hawthorn rounding out the first round, but before they do, they are going to place a bid on Essendon Academy prospect Adam Swade. I think they're going to play funny buggers here and give us a little punch in the guts after what we did with Zach Merritt. I've got them bidding on Adam Swade, and Essendon at this stage would hopefully have enough points to match a bid. I'm going to assume that we've done the work to match a bid on at least one of these players. We'd have picked 30 at this stage anyway, which would have slid down with the other team's picks kind of getting dissolved. So we'd have enough to match a bid on Adam Swade, and we will. Adam Swade is a great player to have in the first round, and this would be 4 players taken in the first round for the Bombers, which would be, that'd be great. Has that happened before? Probably not. But yeah, Adam Swade, Small forward, midfielder, nuggety player. I've talked about him a lot. I'll have a preview or profile video on both of our academy products out soon, so I won't talk too much about Suede today. But yeah, I've got the Bombers matching a bid on Suede at 22. And finally, to round out the first round of the draft, I have got Hawthorn taking Ollie Greaves. He is probably a bit of a slider this year. There's been some weaknesses with his defensive transitioning. He's obviously a great big body and a great brute of a player. And funnily enough, the reason I've got Hawthorn taking him is because they were linked to him anyway. He was denied access to their academy. I don't really remember why. But yeah, I've got the Hawks taking Ollie Greaves, their academy prospect, and honestly, a sneaky good draft for the Hawks, being able to take Jacob Farrow, good ball user, good size, good body, behind the ball, and Ollie Greaves is more of that attacking player at the contest. Very different players, but both can probably play a role next year. So yeah, that is my first round mock draft. I have got, obviously you don't care too much about the other teams, I've got the Bombers taking with pick 9, Xavier Taylor, pick 10, Sam Cumming, pick 17, Harley Barker, and pick 22, a bid comes for Adam Suede, and we match it. And if that's to play out that way, I mean, it feels like best case scenario to me. Having Xavier Taylor, Sam Cumming, Harley Barker, and Adam Suede in the first round would be absolutely incredible. Do I think it plays out that way? Probably not. I don't know. It's tough to say. It's really tough to know what we're going to do with our selections. Harley Barker maybe is probably in line to go to another club, but one can dream. One can dream. No, but the point of this video really is to just show you that we are in a very good position with our draft hand, and we could be taking some very good players in this year's draft. There's some great prospects around, some really great talents, and we are in line to take quite a few of them. There's every chance we take 4 players in the first round. Some might even say 5 if a bid for Hussein comes early. I don't think it will personally. But yeah, that is that. Let me know what you think down below. Would you be happy with a draft haul of, I forgot who it was, Xavier Taylor, Sam Cumming, Harley Barker, and Adam Suede? I know I would be. I'd be, Harley Barker on his own would make me happy. But no, cheers for watching, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know who you'd take with those available picks if you were Matt Rosa in his chair with that incredible Lego hair, kind of Mikel Arteta-esque. No, but that's all. Cheers for watching. Like if you enjoyed, Bomber fans. Subscribe if you're new. And as always, go the bloody Bombers.